Hi everyone, this is Mark from Solo Games, and today I have a special interview with Dan, who is the owner of the Magic cards that are currently in my possession to help him liquidate, etc. So, as you probably remember from my last video, I'll link it in the description. You can check out the collection and see the cards that were in it. We kind of go through in detail each individual card or majority of the high value cards and talk about a little bit of Magic history and Magic things. But in this video, Dan was just such a great guest, and I got him on the call to just say a few things and talk. Originally, I was gonna cut it up and say, hey, do a little 5 minute short interview, a couple snippets of Dan and making really cool comments. After the recording, I felt like it was such a great conversation. I just want to share with everybody, unfiltered, uncut, the whole thing. So without further ado, let's go over to that video and let's look at the interview with Dan. All right. Hey Dan.
How's it going?
Good. I see the boxes of Magic cards still in the background. It's awesome.
Yeah, I
And your
know. I
stack.
noticed that too. I was looking at
Yeah.
my background to make sure there was nothing weird there, and then I saw, oh yeah, there's thousands of Magic cards up
It's
there.
hey, this is what happens, when you're a collector, you're a collector. Okay. So basically, I'm kind of unfortunate we didn't have time in person to do this. I would love to have, just even if it's like really crappy camera work, whatever. It would have been really great to be in person, do this thing, just ask you a couple questions. But I wanted to kind of talk to you, put this on recording for all of my audience and people who are potentially future buyers of your cards, to kind of meet you, to see who you are and understand. I mean, these cards aren't just like, it's not just, for example, I was going to say Brushland, but actually we do have a foil Brushland, 7th edition or something, right? Is that right? I think something like that. I forgot. But these aren't just like cards, right? These aren't just dual lands. These are dual lands from a player with lots of history of Magic, with lots of like thoughts, understanding. I want to give you an opportunity, a stage, if you will, to kind of share that with everybody. So why don't you begin by introducing yourself, like who you are and how you kind of got involved with Magic altogether?
Okay. So my name is Dan. I'm a nurse here in Oregon. I've been a nurse 13 years. I have a
Yeah.
wife and 2 kids. And I got into Magic when I was 15 years old, 1995. I actually remember the exact day. And to this day, I can't remember why I remember it, but it was September 15th, 1995. And I think it was just because it was a simple day, an easy date to remember.
Mhm.
But I just remember the exact day I was coming. I just started a school year. I was a freshman in high school, and just uh, started of course, the high school. So it was a new school for me, and I was meeting a new friend. His name was Mark, and we were BSing basically after a graphics. What do you call that? Graphics art class,
Mhm.
and we just gone over kind of like the syllabus and some other things, and um, moving forward. And anyway, we were chewing the fat, but I was chewing his ear off. And as soon as the bell rang, he got up and he started to go, and I followed him, and I was just talking and talking and talking, just completely oblivious of where he's headed.
Mhm.
And I ended up following him into the library. And this is just a break in between classes, and we've got 10, maybe 15 minutes to get to the next class. And he walks up to somebody, they start talking for a second, they sit down, they pull out these cards, each pull out their own, and they shuffle, cut, and then they start playing. And I'm still trying to talk to him. I'm still trying to jabber about the project coming up and all this stuff. And he's barely giving me his attention.
Yeah.
And I'm just so focused on what I'm trying to relay to him that they're, I don't know how far into the game, maybe turn 3 or turn 4, and I suddenly say, "What is this? What are you doing?"
Yeah. What are you guys playing?
What do you play? What is,
Yeah.
and they're annoyed. And Mark, he was annoyed because I was still chewing his ear off, and he was trying to
Yeah.
play a game and actually
Right.
communicate with his opponent. And
Yeah.
anyway, but they said, "Hey, this is Magic the Gathering," and I said, "What's that?" "Well, it's a card game." "Well, how do you play it?" And they threw one of those little or 93. Sorry, getting called. Right. They threw one of those little rule books at you. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
seen them before.
I,
Yeah,
I
so
yeah,
they
I
threw
think I
one.
just threw away a couple of these this morning while I was breaking down some other boxes, but yeah.
Yeah. So they threw a like one from, I don't know if it was revised or fourth
Yeah.
edition, but
Yeah.
they threw
Yeah.
one at me and they said, "Hey, read this. and that'll give you the basic rules.
Hmm.
And I said, well, can I play? And they're like, yeah, read that, and then you can play. And so before lunch, so the next two classes, I read that rule book twice. Didn't learn anything in school, or but I read the rule book. Sat down at lunch that afternoon. Mark loaned me a deck, and it was one of those island home decks, where your creatures can't attack unless they have islands. And I got completely destroyed. Lost 0 to 20. I mean, this guy, he actually had some really good cards,
Hmm.
and he just ran over me with flying creatures and stuff like that. I had no idea what I was doing, and I loved it. And I thought, this is
Yeah.
an incredible game.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, how do I get cards? And everybody there at lunch that was in the library, and there was a good group of at least 12 guys playing Magic, and a gal. And
Yeah.
and they just started throwing their extras at me, commons, and
Wow.
lots of cards from Chronicles and lands and stuff like that. And I put together a deck mostly of commons and a few uncommons, and green. It was easy to make
Hmm.
a big beefy green deck, and that was it. That was the start of my Magic career, and just became obsessed with that game. And yeah, so
What sets were, I guess, they playing with back then? What's the latest set that just released when you were introduced to Magic?
I think it was Ice Age. I think Ice Age had just
Oh,
dropped,
it's a fun
and
one. Still
people were
cover stuff.
losing their minds over
Yeah.
Jester's cap. I remember Jester's cap being 60, $80
Oh
for
wow. Okay.
her. And people were just losing their mind over that card. The idea of going into your opponent's library and taking out 3 cards was just unheard of. And so people were obsessed with that card. And
That's cool.
yeah, so I remember that really big. I remember several of the juniors and seniors, they had the older cards there. There were guys there with Black Lotuses and Moxes, and by then the Power Nine had already been established,
Yeah.
and people knew what was good and what wasn't good. And you could easily get destroyed by somebody, pretty quick.
If you have the wrong cards or didn't have the right ones, I guess.
If you were a noob like I was,
Yeah.
and somebody sat down in front of you and first turn played a land and a Black Lotus right into a Juzum Dijin, you were going to have a bad day, and or they would Dark Ritual into a Soul Ring and
Yes.
a
Oh,
Juzum Dijin. And
yes.
suddenly on turn one, you're dealing with a 5/5. You're on a 4 turn count,
Yeah.
before you're out. And at that time in Magic, there wasn't a whole lot of removal
Yeah.
for black creatures in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah.
Terror and Lightning Bolt were the two big removals,
That's
and
right.
neither
You
one.
can't you can't scare black creatures and you can't scare artifacts, right? So that's why it doesn't allow you to destroy artifacts or black creatures.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And
it's very
Lightning Bolt
flavorful.
didn't have enough juice, and
Yeah.
so
Two
if you
lightning
weren't
bolts,
running,
but yeah.
yeah, you needed two Lightning Bolts. So that usually meant, if they went first, that usually meant you were at least taking 5 to the face. So
Yeah.
before anything else happened. But the white players, people who played a lot of white decks, they had Soul Ring, or sorry, they had Swords to Plowshares and
Yep.
Spirit Link, so they had
Yeah. Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
And so I actually quickly transitioned to white decks,
Okay.
early on in my career, because Sarah Angel I thought was just the best card out there. It wasn't, but it was, at the
Yeah.
time, it was a beefcake. The
Oh,
idea
for
of being able to
sure.
attack and block. I mean, that was
Yeah, to
impressive.
not basically not yeah, you're attacking evasively, but also you block everything. Basically you're
Yeah,
flying so you can block, ground and air. That's yeah, it's a strong card. I think obviously today's, rates that's not a good card anymore, but I think back
not
in the
big
old school
now.
days, yeah.
5 mana for a 4/4 with vigilance. That's
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're like you switch over to being a white player. I'm actually really curious from the back in the old school days, like how good was healing? Because I see a lot of like white cards back from, I want to say up to like maybe fourth, fifth, sixth edition, even lots of healing on white. Was that always a good mechanic, or was it bad even back then?
It was bad even back then. We just didn't know it.
Okay.
There was so little healing.
Yeah.
Ice Age kind of brought a little bit more in. Zurin Orb, that
Yeah.
that card dominated games
Oh,
for a
yeah.
very long time.
Yeah.
And but there was just not a lot of healing. And early on, I realized cards like Healing Salve were not
Mhm.
very good. But I was still a victim of using Alabaster Potion. I just kept hoping that late game it might be worth something, but
Maybe. Yeah.
healing for 5, 6 maybe,
Yeah.
and then getting smacked in the face for 10 the next turn just wasn't an answer. So there was a lot of I would say there was a lot of healing, maybe like Drain Lives were probably really
Mhm.
good. Actually,
Yeah.
they were really good, but Zern Orb kind of tailed those in because you can
Yeah.
only drain for their exact amount of life, no more. And so the Zern Orb player would then activate the Zern Orb to gain 2 life and be out of the death zone.
I see.
And anyway, so that was sorry, my kids just got home. So they
Yeah,
came
I
to
got you.
find
Yeah,
came
yeah.
looking for dad.
It's
So
life. It's life. Yeah.
yeah, but so yeah, but most healing spells were pretty awful.
Hmm.
But you know, when we all have our learning curves to figuring out when it was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say Drain Life was probably one of the best ones. Zern Orb was every tournament deck was running Zern Orb,
Hmm.
at least just one, usually no more than that. And then Spirit Link was actually
Yeah.
quite popular,
Yeah.
both as an offensive and defensive card.
Yeah.
So you'd put it on your Force of Nature, you'd put it on their Jusum de Jin, so
Yeah, that's
or
the part about right, the old school lifelink where yeah, it's just kind of different, right? I guess that goes back in the old the rule set before where you could die before the healing happens, whereas now both things happen at the same time, so you could technically go under it and over life
yep.
zero, yeah, at
It
the same turn.
wasn't. Yeah, so it used to, I think at one point it wasn't checked till like the end of the turn, and
That's
then it
right.
was, well, at the end of the phase, and now it's instantly checked. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so there was a lot of leeway to, well, I'm at negative life. In response, I'm going,
The
I'm gonna
heal.
do like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Exactly. So you mentioned like tournament decks and those kind of things. Like from just chatting with you, you kind of played the game semi-professionally. I don't know if you were ever professionally playing this thing, but you were playing competitively at least, right? Like pretty
yeah.
serious about competitive. What do you think about that? What are some parts about competitive play that you like the most? What are some of the parts you like the least about competitive?
I loved making a deck that would go the distance, would
Hmm.
get first place in a tournament. There
Yeah.
is, especially if it's your deck idea. When I
Yeah.
was really, really active in the tournament scenes and playing every week, if not multiple tournaments a week, um, I prided myself on making my own decks. I prided myself on being familiar with all the decks that were active in the tournaments, basically nationally, internationally. I prided myself on knowing and being familiar with those decks and the deck lists,
Hmm.
so that I could plan ahead. What's the best deck this week? What's the
Hmm.
best deck this month? What
Right.
what do I have to beat? And I think I've told you this before. I would make those decks and then give them to my friends to play against me. It's
Right.
like, hey, I need to practice against
Practice.
this deck in case it shows up at a tournament.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and and they were like, really? Can't I just play my own cards? No, no, I've got a tournament tomorrow. I've got to practice.
Yeah.
And so making your own creation, it's an incredible feeling,
Yeah.
and also practicing a deck until you've basically got it memorized, and what to expect. Okay, I've burned through these cards. I know what's coming up left. What's left. I know what will save me.
Hmm.
That kind of stuff. That's
Yeah.
that's awesome. And then there's of course the rush of placing. That is just a great feeling. The drawback to competitive play is that you're playing competitively.
Hmm.
When you're just sitting down playing with a friend, you can say, hey, you might have just made a mistake.
Hmm.
You might consider doing this instead, and you
Yeah.
can have them take it back.
Yeah.
um, but in a tournament you're playing to win,
Yeah.
so you don't help your opponent. And also, it really revved me up. I was very, very, very anxious. I'm shuffling my cards, and constantly counting them, and I'm just
Uh,
just fidgety, fidgety, fidgety.
I see.
And I really didn't like that part. I didn't like how cutthroat
It was.
tournament plays were. But at one point, I was really getting into it anyway. Because I felt like I had I don't know, a gift. I felt like I was really good, and
Hmm.
I had a chance of potentially going professional. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's must be a really cool, like, moment, like to be in that place where you have the choice of like, hey, I'm good enough to consistently like top at locals or even regionals, to potentially put this as a career option where, yeah, I'm like being paid or sponsored. I don't have to pay for my own cars. I don't have to pay for, travel. I get some consistent baseline salary for like, just showing up, right? Obviously you have to continuously win, but keep your ranking, that kind of stuff. But still, yeah, it is
Yeah.
interesting to turn your hobby into your like career. So
Right.
yeah,
But and there's a catch to that, and that was exciting. That idea was exciting because I loved Magic.
yeah,
It was like a second job to me. I mean, I was working 40 hours a week, and when I wasn't working,
the
I was
magic.
reading about Magic. I was studying Magic. I was
Yeah,
practicing Magic. I would play by myself. I would make a deck, and then I would
yep,
practice, and I would see, okay, on turn 1, what should I expect? On turn 2, what can I
yeah.
expect? All the way up to turn 7 or 8. Then I'd scoop it all up, shuffle it up, and
Do it
do it
again.
again and again
Yeah,
and again. And,
yeah,
until and I could work out so many bugs,
yeah.
and it,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I
go
mean, you
ahead.
say this is super funny because I before my big tournament, just like about a month ago, I was doing the same thing, and my wife walks in the room, is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm playing against myself," and I'm not just. It's the same thing, like because I don't have people around me I can just like hand a deck to, but I did play against what I felt like was my worst matchup, right? Because I already know what deck I'm taking to the tournament. Maybe slight minor adjustments, but I was playing against my worst matchup to figure out, okay, like what are they likely to do turn two? What am I going to do? Like it's the things you're saying, it just resonates with me so much because I'm hearing, I'm like 30 years later, it's the same thing, right? Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, it was just cool. It was a
Yeah.
really great experience, and um, it was a lot of fun to go to tournaments with friends and stuff like
Yeah.
that, especially locally. So at the time that I was really revving up into Magic, I was in my late 20s and late 20s, early 30s,
Yeah.
and I was going to tournaments every week with some local friends there, um, and you know, I just it was fun and exciting to place every week, and to
Yeah.
know that, in Clatsop County, in a county in Oregon, when in you're the top dog, and you
Yeah.
know it,
Yeah.
and then to go up into Portland where they don't really know who you are,
Yeah.
Portland, Hillsboro, and then to win a tournament up there,
That's
and they're like,
awesome.
who the heck is this
Is
guy?
this guy? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
you're just like, "Oh, yeah, you don't know me here, but you will,"
You will.
and then and to have, that game store start to know you and
Mhm.
see you showing up regularly and stuff. And
Yeah.
then, of course, going up to Seattle and
Yeah.
participating in tournaments up in Seattle,
Yeah.
during PAX, for example, Penny Arcade Expo.
Mhm.
It's a 4-day thing. It used to just be 3, but it's 4 now. But our mutual friend Aaron and I, we used to participate in tournaments up there, and
It's huge.
I mean, and that's I mean, there's a lot of players playing up in those
Yeah.
tournaments, and they're playing until 2, 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
running so many different tournaments at the same time, and
Right.
and just incredible experiences and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, I was so obsessed with Magic and wanting to know all the rules. I even became a rules advisor, and was registered with the game, with Wizards of the Coast, and had my own little card,
Oh
and
wow.
everything else. And so,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, yeah. I mean,
So I
uh,
mean, it sounds like even now we're talking about Magic. You told me that you like after we chatted, we spent the whole day sorting your cards. You had some like Magic dreams. Hopefully not nightmares, but so tell me like why are you selling your Magic cards? Well, what's why are you exiting? I guess. Yeah.
so it started probably 13 years ago. I was our mutual friend Aaron and I, we were up in Seattle
Hmm.
and participated in a mini Masters tournament, which is it was like our second or third tournament that day,
Hmm.
and it's a form of a draft. It's a
Yeah.
type of drafting, and I knocked Aaron out into third place, which annoyed him because he had a
Yeah.
better deck. I just had a ringer of a card that won that won the tournament for me. But Anyway, played against the last guy, and he wanted to call it a draw and split the
Split, yeah.
prize. I'm like,
Hmm.
and I was like, yeah, I think I can beat you, and I did, uh,
Yes.
and I swept him, and
Yeah,
I took the prize, and it was the third set of Zendikar.
yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. Now I can't think of what it's called, but it was a foil set of that, which is of course part of the collection that is
Hmm.
being sold now. But
Yeah.
so it's like somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning. I'm back at the hotel room and I'm sitting there and I'm marveling at the tournament and another win and how fun that was you know and I'm thinking, do I want to keep doing this? My
Hmm.
family, my wife just had another baby, and so I've got a 3-year old and a baby at home. I've got a wife at home, and I'm up in Seattle playing a
Hmm.
card game. And I
Yeah.
thought, if I was really going to do this, I should have done this a decade ago. I should
Yeah.
have read a decade ago.
Yeah.
And I realized that, um, one, it was a little too late
Yeah.
to do that, but also, again, I mentioned that I didn't like the kind of person I was when I was in tournaments
Hmm.
because, I wanted the win so bad. I didn't just want to place. I didn't want third place. I didn't want second place. I wanted the win. And I was so cutthroat, and
Yeah.
I just didn't like the coming down from tournaments. I did
Yeah.
not like how it felt. It kind of just made me sick to my stomach,
Yeah.
the anxiety and everything coming down. And I just said, I don't want to do that anymore. And
Yeah.
that was literally my last tournament. I never went to another tournament at home, never went to another tournament in Portland.
Wow.
I came home, and that was it. That was and I didn't know that was going to be my last tournament, but it was. I
But
played, and I've played casually since,
mhm.
especially starting a couple of years ago. My son, he turned 13, I think it was, and so 10 years after I basically
Wait.
stopped playing,
Yeah.
my son's like, hey, I was at the school and this kid was playing this really cool game. It's called Magic. Have you ever heard of it? And I just
You're like,
kind
have
of
I
like,
heard about it?
I was like, yeah, I might know a thing or
Rank
two
one.
about Magic. Yeah. I might know something, son. Yeah.
Cool.
And so I kind of got a little bit back into it with him, kind of helping him learn the game and stuff like that. And whatever cards don't sell, or I don't ship or move or whatever,
Yeah.
they'll go to him so that
Yeah.
he can, because I've already given him and his friends thousands of cards to boost their collections and help
Yeah.
them to just make decks.
Yeah.
Because they have all these deck ideas, they just don't have the financial means to build them, and so
That's right.
I have the means, and so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
help them out. So that's been really cool, but like I said, I'm not using them anymore.
Hmm.
And, like we were talking about, when I was buying my dual lands for $5 to $10 each,
Don't.
in
My viewers are gonna like cry every single time. Yeah, we know about this. We know back in the old school days, y'all trading Shivan dragons for dual lands is like that's the meme, by the way. All the young kids like us are like, oh yeah, they're trading Shivan dragons for duels. They have no clue what power level means.
my first Shivan Dragon, I gave up, I think it
Yeah,
was 20 cards, 20 rares or something like that for it,
yeah,
and I remember paying 12 or $20 for my second Shivan Dragon from
yeah,
another kid. And
yeah,
but I could get dual lands for $5, $10.
yeah, yeah,
The Underground Sea and Tundras and stuff, they were always the higher end $10, but
yeah.
Badlands Plateaus, $5 easy,
Sure.
and and through my Magic career, I've had, I don't know, maybe 80 total dual lands that I've
Yeah,
traded, acquired, sold here and there or whatever. But you know, I got 41 right now that are now going up, but
yeah,
it's just yeah, it was it was so much easier to get them,
yeah,
and I mean, even when I was a sophomore, when I was 16, a guy
yeah,
offered to sell me a Black Lotus for $300, and he was going to throw in 4 Moxes for another 200.
yeah,
He had 8 of the 9 Power 9, and he was like, yeah, $500. We can you can buy these cards, and I was very much interested because the only players I was losing to at that time were
with
ones that had all these old cards. And I thought, man,
Nice.
I'd love to even the playing ground, and the few tournaments I'd done up to that point, the people who won, they were using Black Lotuses and Moxes and things
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
and anyway, so I was very much interested in that, but I was working at McDonald's, making 5.50 an hour,
Yep.
and I had girlfriends,
Hmm.
and they wanted to go to the movies, and they wanted to go to the skating rink, and they wanted to go places and do
Yeah.
things, and if I wanted to go on dates, I needed
Hmm.
the money, and I chose chicks over magic cards, which, looking back, maybe that was a mistake. I don't know, but
I
it
think
would have been
you did okay. I think you did
it,
okay. You have
yeah, I
kids
know,
now and stuff
right?
like that. Yeah, it's good.
But
It's very rewarding. Yeah.
it would have been a sound investment, that's for
Yeah.
darn sure. $500 for for a Black Lotus and 4 of the 5 Moxes would have been a sound investment
Pretty
today. So
good. Yeah. Pretty good by
yeah,
today's standards for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
What I mean, you don't need to get into details, all that stuff, but like if you want to share, like what are you gonna planning on doing with the money that you get from selling your magic cards?
So the first thing I'm going to do is I wanted to do some repairs on the house without dipping into
Savings.
savings or
Yeah.
emergency fund.
Yeah.
And so this wall behind me with the cards up there, this wall is actually going to get knocked out on the other side, and
Hmm.
we're going to fill that in, and we're going to there's a big sunroom on the other side, and we're actually going to turn it into an actual bedroom, because this door right here leads to a half bathroom.
Hmm.
I'm in a man cave garage right now, and we're gonna flip that. We're gonna turn the sunroom into a very large bedroom with a closet and a full bathroom.
Nice. Yeah.
And then the other thing we're going to do is I've been meaning to take my wife to Iceland and Scotland for several years now. We were going to do it when my son was a year old. He's 16 now. But then my family wanted to do a group vacation, and so we went on that instead. And we've
Yeah.
just never gotten back around to going to
Mm.
Iceland, going to Scotland, and
Okay.
that's what we're gonna do with it. We're gonna go have a big fat trip, just her and I. And
Okay. So
so,
to Mark, no pressure selling the cards, but there's
yeah, that's right.
a lot
You
of
know,
promises pending on making sure these things convert.
I
Okay.
know. And as soon as the money's in pocket, she's
Yeah.
gonna be like, okay, let's do it. So
Yeah. Yeah. What about your favorite card in your collection? What's your number one if you had to choose one card?
my first monster that was ever given to me, when that day,
Hmm.
September 15th, 1995,
Yeah.
when people were throwing cards at me, the
Yeah.
very first monster ever thrown at me was a Dirkwood Boars, the 4/4 for 5 mana vanilla creature. Um, and I think it's probably still my favorite.
Mhm.
Um, Another favorite card of mine is Grizzly Bears. One green, one colorless, 2/2. It,
There, man. We just in this new card game I'm playing, we have like bears as well. It's pretty standard stuff, I guess now. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's pretty funny. It's a running joke. Yeah, everyone knows what a bear is. It's tutu vanilla.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
and I don't know, I mean, just those cards remind me of a very simple time in Magic,
yeah,
and, just when the rules weren't as complicated, the
yeah,
game was much more simple, much
hmm,
more fluid,
yeah,
and, it was a very beautiful time, I mean, I used to collect grizzly bears, which was really silly. I think I had a couple hundred of them, which, I mean, everybody had them, and I'd be like,
hmm,
"Hey, you wanna get rid of your grizzly bears? I'll trade for them."
yeah,
And it's just but, yeah, I think those 2 cards are probably my favorite. Um, like I said, my green deck had Scrib Sprites in it,
yeah.
which, I also like that card, but, um, I don't know. Those are probably 3 of my favorite creatures.
Hmm.
I've always loved the card Berserk.
Hmm.
There's 4 of them in the collection there that are going.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
there's a wonderful feeling about throwing down a bunch of Berserks on a
yeah,
creature,
yeah,
buffing it up, throwing Berserks, and then watching your opponent's jaw kind of drop. That was
yeah.
always fun. It was never a fair card.
No,
Berserk was never a fair card,
still not still unfair even today. Actually, yeah, I think it still
Yeah.
holds quite a bit of value because it's still playable in a lot of formats, you know, where it's still very
Absolutely.
competitive. Yeah. What about like some? I want to ask about like one of these mechanics. Feel free to talk about one of them. Damage on the stack and mana burn, two mechanics that have been removed from Magic. What do you think about? Pick one of them and then just elaborate on how you feel about it. Whichever one you have a stronger feeling on.
Oh, crud. I missed Mana Burn.
Okay.
I could talk about either one of them because I
Yeah.
loved both of those rules.
Yeah.
But I miss Mana Burn. There was something so fun about, having power surges in play, having mana flares in play, having
Hmm.
I can't even remember all of them, but
Yeah.
cards that punish you for having lands untapped at the end of turn. I can't remember all of them right now, but it was so fun
Yeah.
to punish people for using their lands or for overusing,
Hmm.
you know, um, mana drain used to actually have a drawback. You'd
Right.
counter a spell, and if it
Yeah.
was too big, it was going to kill you next turn.
Oh yeah. Actually, I never thought about that. Yeah. Like for us today, mana drain is a great card because you get the mana. But if you have to consider that, hey, you have to spend the mana too, that's a big downside, actually.
Yeah.
Could be, I
If
guess. Yeah.
somebody channel fireballs you on turn two,
Yeah.
it pulls it off, does a channel fireball, and you mana drain it, you've got to
Yeah.
deal with 20 mana your next
Yeah.
turn,
Hmm.
and hope you can use it all. Otherwise, you're still going to take a bit. I mean, yes, mana drain kept you alive,
Yeah.
but you're not going to be in the best shape still, And so
Yeah.
it was it had drawbacks. It was not a
Yeah.
perfect card. It was still considered, incredibly powerful,
Right.
for its
Right.
time, but it's even more powerful now, you know.
Yeah. That's
So
that's that's probably the most interesting I've heard. Because I never thought about mana drain that way. But yeah, with mana burn, mana drain is not necessarily just free. It could be bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and I mean, like I said, there used to be drawbacks about miscalculating your mana, over tapping.
Yeah.
You dark ritual twice to
Yeah.
play something, but you only use four of it.
Yeah.
You pay a price to do certain things, and
Yeah.
that was special. That was
Yeah.
cool,
Yeah.
because they made you do math,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
All right. So last question. I just want to give you a moment to, say something to the current Magic players, viewers of mine, etc. Is there anything you want to tell current Magic players? Something? I don't know. Anything.
don't take it too seriously.
Hmm.
Um, like I said, going hard in tournaments burnt me out of the game. And, I mean, I eventually just kind of went away from playing with friends. Some of the friends that I was playing with during those tournaments, I mean, they're still playing, they're still active, but
Mm.
it burnt me out so bad that I just stopped playing. I mean, I played casually a little bit and then eventually just completely stopped. And it was an incredibly fun game.
Mhm.
And it's quite enjoyable. But, it's like I just feel like I've already played a lifetime of Magic, and I've experienced a lifetime of anxiety playing the game.
Yeah.
And so if you're enjoying Magic the way you're playing it now, I don't encourage you to force yourself to change. You know, play Magic because you enjoy it and for what you enjoy it for.
Yeah.
Now I I take the commons and uncommons that I've given my friends and I make decks for them. So when my son brings over a new person who's never
Yeah.
played Magic before, I've got a deck for them. It's like, here, this is yours now. You
Yeah.
get to keep this,
Hmm.
practice with it, and welcome to the little group of friends of Magic players. And I enjoy playing with them. I enjoy chewing the fat with them about the old days,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
definitely, if magic is passion, if you have a passion for magic, pursue it, but
Mhm.
don't burn yourself out, because it is a beautifully fun game. And I still get super nostalgic and emotional. And the evening after you left, Mark,
Mhm.
and took a big chunk of the
Yeah.
value of my collection with
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
uh I felt naked that night. I mean, not just because you stole my pants. No, but I felt naked because um, there went a part of my childhood You
Yeah.
know, there went a big chunk of my youth, and then of course my 20s
Hmm.
with you. My
Hmm.
these collection of cards that I've been so proud of for so
Hmm.
many years, you know. And so a part of me is sad to get rid of it, very sad.
Yeah.
But another part of me is excited to look forward to new adventures,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
be the guy sitting on the porch of, back in my day,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody had dual lands and they fell from the sky. And,
Yeah.
anyway, it's like, sure, grandpa, and
Yeah.
I look forward to that. But I also feel like my collection is just sitting there collecting dust.
Yeah.
Nobody uses it. It's been
Mhm.
in a safe for
Hey, it
10,
has to.
10, 13 years,
Wow. Yeah.
just cards just sitting there. When you came up here, you were looking through decks that have been there for 10, 13 years. And
Hmm.
my friends knew me quite well for making new decks every few months,
Yeah.
taking apart my 20, 30 decks and then
Yeah.
making new ones, because
Yeah.
like I said, I prided myself on new decks, new
Yeah.
ideas and stuff. And those cards had just been sitting there
Hmm.
doing nothing. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to think that somebody else is going to pick up those cards and run with them and have a great time with them. And they're going to sit down and play against somebody else and drop a berserk. And that's going to be my berserk.
Yeah.
They're gonna
That's
they're
that's
gonna
really beautiful. Yeah.
yeah.
And actually, yeah.
Go ahead. It
And
feels good, that idea. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, totally. I mean, and just want to say thank you for taking your time talking to me about all this stuff. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
Thank you so much again.
of
I
course.
really appreciate your help. And
Yeah. Okay, everybody, that was the interview with Dan. As you can see, old school Magic player, knows a ton of stuff. I mean, the guy has been playing Magic probably longer than a lot of people have been alive. So it's really cool to talk to a player like this and listen to the story, the battle stories, and what old school Magic used to be like, how cheap dual lands used to be, those kind of things. If you are interested in purchasing any cards from this collection, if you're a patron of mine, for example, and you can contact me directly about any of the cards, I will have a list for the patrons, exclusive pricing, etc. for them. But for everyone else who is curious about this collection, curious about any specific cards, obviously you can message me directly on our community Discord. But also they will be listed on eBay, and also TCG Player will be basically where you can see the cards. Solar Games is my handle on those platforms. So if you want to see those cards, if you want to purchase, just let me know. If you have any questions about any of the cards, etc. And let's help Dan get his remodeling done and make sure him and his wife can take a nice trip to Iceland and Scotland and all these things. So anyways, that's going to do it for me for today. Mark Solar Games signing out. Stay classy.